Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 6th episode of the Beyond Crude podcast, where we discuss the impact of the EACOP campaign in Uganda and Tanzania. So joining me today are three guests. You could start with you, Rehema.
Thank you. My name is Rehema Peter. I work with the local organization Partnership for Green Future. We work around advocacy on climate justice, and we are mobilizing communities in Tanzania and also in areas affected by EACOP projects. We're also doing Stop EACOP campaign.
We didn't come to you, Mr. Edwin. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Edwin Mombere. I'm the director at Center for Citizens Conserving the Environment. We are a non-governmental organization that is seeking to transform environmental policies that can benefit the vulnerable in Uganda. It's time for Africa and Uganda at large to really stand at the center stage as a leader in renewable energy by investing more in all the clean energy technologies, of which Africa has a great potential in doing so, because we can generate more power from wind, hydro, and solar generation, and many more other real clean energy solutions. By doing this, we shall be able to be energy secure, because currently we have lots of energy potential, but we are not really investing in these potentials that we have. Thank you.
Anna, go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Anna Amar, and I'm the Interim Africa Communications Manager for 350 Africa. I'm very happy to be here with you all today.
So just starting out, Anna, could you elaborate on the REPower Africa initiative, its goals and strategies?
Sure. Thank you for giving us the platform to share about this new campaign that we launched. So the REPower Africa campaign, led by 350 Africa and our partners ground such as CSIC and Partnership for Green Future that we have here today, unites regional community renewable energy projects, right? So urging financiers and governments worldwide to prioritize and increase investments in affordable, reliable, and clean energy, especially for the communities at the forefront of the crisis. So we're calling for significant investments from financial institutions and developed nations, along with supportive policies from our African governments to facilitate the deployment of renewable energy. So it's not just about sustainability, it's about driving economic development and harnessing the potential of renewable energy to generate hundreds of thousands, if not millions of jobs by 2050. So our vision really is to make sure that the African community groups and leaders at the grassroots level do play a central role in accelerating the deployment of energy solutions with the scale, the urgency, and the ambition that this requires. So in this first phase, starting from Uganda and Tanzania, where the East African crude oil pipeline threatens the lives and futures, these at the forefront of the crisis to champion renewable energy projects from the ground up.
Thank you. And I mean, just building up on that, these initiatives working with the government and the different stakeholders, in your assessment, how can it connect and support the Pan-African renewable energy movement?
Well, REPower Africa is uniquely positioned to be a transformative force in the Pan-African renewable energy movement and space, because we're addressing these shared crucial issues and leveraging the continent's vast renewable energy potential. You know, we all know that despite contributing just around 3% of the global carbon emissions, Africa is already bearing the brunt of climate change's harshest impacts, right? So this paradox really highlights the urgency for African nations to adopt renewable energy solutions. An estimated 600 million people on the continent still lack access to electricity, significantly affecting their daily lives and prospects for the future. So this energy gap hinders education, healthcare, economic development, and overall quality of life. So by focusing on wind and solar energy, REPower Africa champions a shift to renewable sources that promise a clean and affordable energy for the whole continent, right? So the campaign emphasizes the transformative power of community-led initiatives. So across Africa, communities are taking matters into their own hands, rejecting fossil fuels and strengthening the renewable energy movement. These grassroots efforts are not only ways to reclaim their power, but also to foster hope and resilience against the worsening climate impacts. And like I said, the first phase of this campaign is happening in communities around the EACOP pipeline in Uganda and Tanzania, but we know that there's a lot of similarities and demands coming from other countries from the region, Cameroon, DRC, Senegal, and so on and so on. So, ultimately, to make our vision possible, we must be open to every single sector, actor, and region who can make a positive contribution to this. The idea being that the more there is cross-regional collaboration, the more we will work on ways of ensuring that we've got the most inclusive policies to bring our vision to life.
Thank you. Edwin, in discussion around the issue of energy, we've been on this matter around EACOP for a while. But just to recap again, what in your documented assessment has been the impact that it's had on the environment, on the social communities, and especially on people's way of life along the entire 1,400-kilometer stretch?
Thank you. Well, the East African Crude Oil Pipeline has had several impacts on the communities. One, I'll classify them into two. There has been an impact on the environmental and also on the social way of life, how people have been living. Initially, the people used to live in a community where they had access to all the natural resources. They were living in communities where they were living in families, in extended families. So when the East African Crude Pipeline came in, the people were displaced. Secondly, their livelihoods were affected because they were told to leave their lands and to go and settle on other pieces of land that were allocated to them. However, they could not move with the soil fertility. These are the people who used to stay on fertile soils. They are basically farmers. This is where they derive their livelihood from. They have been transferred from lands which are very fertile and they've been farming on these lands for long into new areas which are totally different. So basically means the agricultural output is really poor. They are not able to meet all their needs because they can't sell the extra produce to earn some money. Secondly, they have been relocated to distant places which have limited access to health. And the only thing that government has done for example, in Kijumba, it is maybe setting up a health center which is around 140 kilometers away. This is big challenge for those that are not able to afford to pay extra transport money to use a motorcycle to reach there. Those that can walk, it's really far for them to walk. Secondly, there have also been cultural and social disruptions. These are communities whose culture is very unique in a way that they stay closer to their loved ones. This is what I mean. For example, in the Alor, when someone dies, the dead is buried close to the home. So when the pipeline came in, the people were displaced and they left the graves there. So this is not in line with their culture. The oil company, Total and Sinop, they promised them that they would relocate the graves, which is something up to now they have not yet done. So all these impacts that they are creating, running away basically from displacement to livelihoods to community health and cultural and social disruptions, they have really created all these disruptions in the communities. Furthermore, they have also created environmental impacts. They have also affected land use and degradation because people now have limited access to land. The little land that has been given to them is now being fragmented amongst very many people. Yet previously where they used to stay, they used to have chunks and chunks of land, so they were able to plant a variety of crops, which is something that is now limited because there are now many and have been put in a specific location. So the land use there is really a challenge, and we're expecting a decrease in agricultural production. Secondly, it has also created wrangles amongst the project affected person. Just imagine someone who has been living on something like 2 acres is now living on a small plot of land, 50 by 100 feet, and is also given another piece of land, 50 by 100 feet, to plant crops. This is very little land if you're to consider the way we live in the African setting. We have really lived on very big chunks of land, and when this project comes in, it really affects the African African way of living. So all these are challenges that the people are going through. Then we have limited water resources. If you go to Lake Albert, the fishermen will tell you they have been limited on the number of times they're supposed to be on the lake fishing. Reason being, CNOOC has put an oil rig there. So they want to extract and dispose of oil waste into the lake at night, and they don't want the fishermen to see them do so. So all these are challenges that are affecting the fishermen, the economic stability of these communities. And secondly, also the women who used to fetch water, the water for agricultural use, all these have been limited. There's a lot of militarization in these communities. This is something that has not been there before. It is not only affecting the access to natural resources, but it's also affecting them mentally because they feel they have been trapped in their own land. And yet they're supposed to have the right to access all these natural resources as a nation of Uganda. So all these are challenges that are there. Lastly, but not least, we also have biodiversity loss. We are seeing so many construction of the pipeline, digging of trenches, cutting down of trees, extraction of oil in eco-sensitive areas, for example, in the Maximum Falls National Park, Lake Albert, and the pipeline that is going to pass adjacent to Lake Victoria. This is also a big challenge because we're also seeing more pipelines that are going to be constructed within the region. We are looking at another pipeline that's going to be constructed from Tanzania to Uganda to transport natural gas. Natural gas is going to be used in the industries, for example, the iron ore. Initially, they had planned to import coal from Tanzania, so they changed strategy. Now they are going to construct another pipeline to bring in natural gas to Uganda. We are seeing another pipeline, a proposed pipeline that is going to be constructed from Kenya to Uganda to bring in oil, refined oil, that is going to be used in Uganda. So all these are putting so much pressure on the unique natural ecosystem areas that we have that can't be replaced, that there's no amount of money that can be equated to the beauty of these natural resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Edwin, for that. Coming to you, Rehema, we are seeing a similar impact in Tanga, especially around the mangrove forests. What are some of those facts that you can see already manifesting within the communities that are affected by EACOP?
Thank you. As for Tanzania, there have been a lot of impact, especially on mangrove forests. As we all know that mangrove forest is a home for a lot of biodiversity. But due to the construction of EACOP construction, the drilling and everything have disturbed a lot. Even the fishermen are complaining that now they can't get fish nearby coast area because of the drilling. But again, many people the villagers were depending on forests, on mangrove forests, like to run their day-to-day activities, life, and most of them were fishermen. But now they are suffering because they can't make their daily earning like they used to do before because of the scarcity of fish. Yeah, and another thing is also the disturbance because of the noise during the drilling. So people are suffering, especially those who are living around the mangrove forests. Yeah.
Thank you. And just building up on the conversations we had started with earlier, Anna, on renewable energy. We had mentioned about the stakeholders involved. And just to recap that, what's especially been the role of the civil society and the other interest groups in helping to, facilitate sustainable renewable energy as a priority issue?
As for Tanzania, civil society organizations and the organization that I work with, PGF, Partnership for Green Future, we are continuing with advocacy and the campaign, especially on renewable energy, because as we know, there is a promise with EACOP project that at least 200 to 400 jobs will be created, and they use that narrative to kind of deceive people. But in real sense, the researchers show that with renewable energy up to 2015, there will be creation of more than 1.5 million jobs. And this is a kind of job which is clean and safe for our environment and our ecosystems, but it is people-owned kind of employment that will be created out of renewable energy. So we still put pressure for our government, especially on policy, to do policy reform so that our policies will support renewable energy. As for now, infrastructure for renewable energy is very expensive, but it's because of the high tariff, and I think maybe it is purpose so that people will believe that renewable is very expensive. That's why we are putting so much pressure for our government to make sure that the policies aligned with the programs which are here already for renewable energy. But again, we are mobilizing the communities around EACOP to also realize potentials around renewable energy so that they can also speak out to the government and the authorities to demand for clean energy. Another thing that we're doing, we are trying to mobilize companies which are working with around renewable energy, especially the solar energy, the solar companies, to make sure that they also support community on access to solar infrastructures, because it's too expensive. So we are doing that, and we are hoping we'll manage to mobilize a good number of solar companies to support REPower campaign by providing solar to the community at either a low price or to give them on credit so that they can pay little by little, because most of the communities, especially around EACOP, the affected community with EACOP projects are very, very remote areas, but also the people there are with very, very low income. So we are hoping with REPower campaign and the efforts that we are putting as civil society organizations, we will manage to put pressure for the government to do policy reform so that renewable energy will be accessible for majority of Tanzanians, but also for the solar companies to see how to work with civil society organization to help communities access solar at a low price or on credit. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Coming to you, Edwin, how do you think, in your assessment, and especially within the communities around the region, how have we fared in harnessing the potential of renewable energy sources?
Thank you. The communities have realized that accessing natural gas and accessing gas for cooking is really going to be expensive for them. So their request to government is to actually reduce on the cost of accessing other sources of energy. And what do I mean by other sources of energy? I mean the renewable energy, the solar. Uganda is gifted a lot the sunshine from January to December. So what the community is demanding is to reduce on the price of accessing the renewable energies technologies, the solar, the batteries, and the lights. Secondly, the request is to also have good quality products on the market. So 350 comes in with a game changer of repowering these communities with renewable energy. The communities were waiting for this kind of project to come into their communities and really try to solve their energy problem. According to the statistics in Uganda, we are producing enough energy, but we still have communities that are not connected to the national grid. So REPower Africa is a game changer in a way that it's going to connect these communities to renewable energy that have been off-grid, and with major focus on areas that have been affected by the East African Crude Pipeline. These are communities who live below, I would say, the poverty line, who can't afford pay a fee that will connect them to the national grid. So, and secondly, they have known about solar products, but the challenge with them the challenge that they are facing is the cost of accessing them. So REPower Africa is a campaign that is going to try to bridge a gap between accessing and also reducing the cost, as well as having good quality products on the Ugandan market through working with the communities, amplifying their voices to demand to reduce in the cost of accessing the solar products, having good quality solar products on the market, and reduction in taxation. These are big barriers of accessing the renewable energy technologies in Uganda.
Thank you. Coming to you, Anna, what have been some of the notable wins when it comes to adoption of renewable energy and its capacity to actually meet local energy demands?
Thank you. And I think it's a great question that will allow me to add on the incredible work that groups like Edwin and Rehema get to do on the ground. To me, telling stories is important. It's important to put a face on the project-affected persons and those who are mobilizing and the ones we are actually advocating for. And one of the stories that I love that we're using for the REPower Africa campaign to showcase what solutions actually look like is one of a transformative journey of Ugandan communities in the Kijumba village that Edwin had mentioned, that was led by empowered women as they resist the threat of the destructive pipeline through innovative solar energy solutions. So Edwin, here with us today, trained them on how to install panels for their homes. And the idea really is that we're showing the connection between the harmful effects of the EACOP pipeline and benefits of community-led solar projects. And despite the ongoing challenges that Edwin has mentioned, their determination sparks a growing movement for renewable energy, culminating in a great call to action for global to be a part of the fight and to be accountable, to support and expand their efforts and ensure a sustainable future powered by clean energy. Such initiatives, to me, are crucial in urging both local and international governments to back renewable energy projects with the necessary support and financing. Because as Edwin says, there's a lot of issues when it comes to accessing technologies. So financial mechanisms are another critical aspect. Communities are actively advocating for financial structures that promote investments in decentralized renewables and clean technology. This grassroots advocacy aims to make renewable energy more accessible and affordable, accelerating its adoption across Africa. And if you'll allow me, I can show you and explain specifically how civil society can come together in global moments to push this advocacy forward. If we take the example of one of the biggest upcoming key moments, that would be COP29. Some might argue or wonder if being present in these spaces can actually bring change, in a tangible way. And to those, I would say that as civil society, as community representatives or leaders, we have to continue making sure that the voice of the communities and the locals are heard. So while sometimes people can get a little bit frustrated by the results or the slowness of the processes, it's imperative that groups like ours and the community show up. During these global moments, if we don't speak up, if we're not present on the ground, if we don't show what's happening in our own countries, no one else will do it for us. So what we want to do with this campaign in a strategic way is to unite the voices and to unite the demands, because if we show up as a united front, as Africans from all over the continent asking for the same things, then we'll also be able to pressure our own leaders and those who are accountable even more. And it's important to note that some of the groups, such as African youth, so vibrant, are crucial in civil society work and advocacy during these moments due to a lot of factors, their innovative, their digital actions and ability to mobilize large-scale movements, ensuring that climate policy address their unique challenges and their needs. The active participation emphasizes how it's cross-generational. We are talking about cross-generational equity, and it bridges gaps between stakeholders. And what we want is very clear. We need greater resources, especially from the global North countries and the billionaires, those who have got the resources has and have been benefiting from the crisis for ages. And to speed up the shift away from fossil fuels to distributed, community-led renewable energy for the communities, we need two things. One is for the African nations to commit to the transition and their support to fossil fuels and remove barriers to renewable energy projects. And two, we need these rich countries in the G7 and the G20 to commit the money and the resources to fund the transition. So those are some of the mechanisms we'll be exploring to make sure that enough resources are generated and turned towards the communities to build their decentralized renewable energy models and units on the ground. Really, at the end of the day, I think if we want to see Africa develop sustainably, inclusively, and putting people's needs at the center of it all, the way to go is through clean energy and decentralized models that are in the hands of the communities, that can boost the economies and that can satisfy the growing demand for electricity.
Thank you, Anna. And just to build up on that, two things in particular that you've mentioned, the government and financing. How, in your assessment, so far have we performed, especially in raising finances, climate finance, but particularly on energy financing? And number two, what is your assessment so far of the government, the level of support the government has provided, or at least governments have provided towards this energy transition?
Governments have made pledges, whether from our own African governments and global leaders, but the issue and what we keep saying is that it's not enough. It's not coming in quickly enough, and we need to take action now. So these global moments and these spaces allow us to keep pushing for that advocacy and making it something that is constant, even when governments shift, even when their strategies don't align, even when we are having new leaders representing these different rich countries. We need to keep our advocacy consistent, asking for more resources. There's a general demand of saying we need $12 trillion to be able to change and implement them in a way that will be sustainable not only for us, but all of the future generations. And if we don't act fast enough, then we will lose this momentum in this moment and this opportunity to also save this situation, this dire situation.
Thank you. We working with communities on renewable energy, especially where we have been able to train over 20 women on how to install solar systems and identify good quality solar products on the market. So this has been ongoing for quite some months. And then with the demand from other communities, more women are willing to join and to learn how to install all these systems that we have provided with them in their communities. This is also creating demand, and we're also working with the communities under the REPower Africa campaign to put more pressure on our government to make sure that we have good solar products on the market. We have accessibility. We have even the small microfinance firms in Uganda to be able to give small solar products to these communities, to these women who are not able to pay upfront fees. So we are working on all these to make sure that they come to light. We are approaching several savings groups to make sure that they are able to give solar loans to these women and communities at large. To validate this, I'll say it is from bottom up. The women and communities affected by the pipeline have really shown interest in accessing the alternative energy sources because they have realized that, one, they were lied to that they would be able to cook using gas, just like the minister promised them. And when they look at the price at which gas costs, they can never afford that amount. Secondly, they also realized that the way to go is to switch to renewable energy technologies, which are also environmental friendly and they can not affect the way of life they've been living. And thirdly, they cannot displace them. So this has been the demand for the communities. And from the national level, currently, there is ongoing research in the eastern part of Uganda that is basically focusing on the quality of products, all products that are imported in Uganda, because there has been several complaints about the quality of products that are being imported in the country. So it is high time that we really push for this and look at the quality of products that are in the Ugandan market. Who imports them? The regulatory body, is it really following up on all these issues that are being raised? So it is time for us now, not only for the communities with renewable energy, but look at the entire system of bringing all these products into the country, and also focusing more on the companies that are producing them locally. Can we really have good quality products? If producing a quality solar panel is being affected by taxation, can we really bring government on the table to at least reduce given percentage on the taxation that is being taxed, so that the company is able to produce a quality solar panel, quality battery, quality wires, quality bulbs that can at least last for long? Because currently the communities, those who have been able to access these products, they will tell you that the quality is poor. The battery only works for a few weeks, a few months, and it's dead. The bulbs, they will tell you they only light for a few hours and they will never light again. So this is something that we are really pushing, and REPower Africa is energizing the whole process of demanding access to good quality products on the Ugandan market.
Yeah, if I can just jump on to what Edwin is saying, because it's very interesting. And I think it's important to remember that there is a vast investment gap between global North and global South countries when it comes to renewable energy. Africa, specifically, a continent that is home to 3/5 of the top solar sites in the world, but where in the last 2 decades, just 2% of global investments in renewable energy were made. So this is how we show that we need to raise billions to shift that balance and adequately fill that funding gap with a successful implementation of a wealth tax. Rich countries will have no excuses to hide behind their failure to meet their international climate finance commitments. And we're hoping to see greater financial obligations for moments such as COP29, but also leading all the way to COP30 in Brazil. So I think it's important to keep all of this in mind as well. Thank you.
Yeah, interesting there, Anna. And one of the things, of course, we've talked about, mentioned is, the youths, the minorities, the women within those rural communities. How well have we, worked towards, in your assessment, plugging them into the particular initiatives that, are targeted towards renewable energy?
In our spaces in 350 Africa, what we do is a lot of mobilizing. That is the basis of our work. We are a campaign-driven organization, and our organizers and groups on the ground are consistently and constantly gathering and getting together to push for all of these different points of advocacy. Mainly the youth. There are so many opportunities for them to join these spaces, to be a part of the movement, and they also have the will to keep this fight going as long as it's intended. And I think that groups such as Edwin and Rehema, who have the experience of being on the ground and also being mobilizers and leaders in their own spaces, really can show how communities come together and how the youth is always ready and willing to add to this fight. They are essential in this work. They're essential in pushing for the advocacy, but really they're the ones who we're doing it for as well. So I understand that this is something that is close to their hearts as much as it's important for everyone else at the forefront of the crisis. So they are a crucial element in all the work that we do. And you can see all the time that they're ready to add to the work, to participate in the campaigns in all the different ways that they can. We do a lot of capacity building, giving them the knowledge and the know-how to go back into their communities and do that same work and get more people in the movement, give more people the capacities to advocate for themselves and also build on the work that's already being done. So the youth is an element and a group that we cannot put aside, that we need to keep in these conversations, these spaces, and these actions.
Thank you. And coming to you, Rehema, the EACOP project, so far we've been on this conversation for quite a while, going across a number of years. We just wanted an update in terms of what's happening on the ground right now. Are the cases in court? Are they continuing with the construction around the Tanga port? What exactly is happening on the ground at this point?
Okay. As for the projects, the construction is going on the ground. They are continuing to set up the pipeline, and they're also continuing with the drilling of the last point at the Tanga, the Chongoleani area in Tanga region, where the oil will be exported to France from there. But as for the community, because of this campaign and ground mobilization that is going on, of course, it's not very easy here because most of the PAPs, the people affected by the project, when they rise and speak out, most of them, they end up being caught by the police and a lot of intimidation and, but people are the community are getting to understand the impact of the project, how bad it is, especially to the environment, and they are now getting to understand that it is fossil fuel, which contribute a lot of carbon emissions, which in turn increase the destruction on ozone layer, which causes the climate change. The local communities, sometimes they don't very understand this kind of stuff, but with the impact that the community is facing, the impact of climate change, when you talk to them like the weather that is changing, excessive rainfall, excessive drought, and the changing of the weather patterns, and the rise of the sea level, extreme rise of temperature. So they understand that we are suffering because this kind of investment have been there for years. And with this project will also contribute to that. So people are becoming aware, but they are also becoming aware that renewable energy is the alternative to fossil fuel projects. So people are starting to raise up and demand for more investment on renewable energy, but also for the government to subsidize on renewable energy. And as for civil society, we are also calling upon the global parties, the global movement, to also continue to demand for more climate financing on renewable energy, especially to global south, because most of our people, they are getting to know that renewable energy is friendly to the environment and is not harmful to our future. They know that, but they can't access, they don't manage, they don't afford renewable energy. So I think it's high time climate financing now to be geared towards supporting accessibility of renewable energy to people in the remote areas, people in the villages, because sometimes we hear and we see a lot of national campaigns and programs around clean cooking, around lighting our houses, our homes, but the accessibility is still a problem because the technologies are very expensive. So what we want to see is that these finance come to support national programs that will help, that will go along with policy reforming, that will help every citizen to access, to afford by reducing the price, but ensuring the quality. Because as Edwin mentioned, it is the same case with Tanzania also. The quality of like solar infrastructures is very, very low. So sometimes people will wish to use solar, but sometimes they go to other sources of energy simply because of the low qualities that they get. So we are calling upon the global parties, but our government also to make sure that the climate financing really benefit our people at the ground who are affected by climate change.
All right. Edwin, coming to you, just on a similar question. What is the current status, given the length with which you've gone with this topic of campaign? What's the current status on your end? Is it a similar situation in Uganda, as Rehema is explaining about Tanzania?
Well, thank you. The current situation on EACOP is quite speedy, at the same time a little bit lagging. Why am I saying it's quite speedy? It is currently the CNOOC and Total Energies are really moving at a very high speed to make sure that the first drop of oil comes out of the ground. We are seeing CNOOC already laying pipelines from Kingfisher now to the central processing facility. And we're also looking at Total Energy putting up oil rigs so fast. I was talking last week to one of their employees. They told me they now have 3 oil rigs in the Telinga area, while CNOOC has 1. So this shows you that the oil companies and that is CNOOC and Total Energies and the government of Uganda are really at pressure to make sure that they get the first oil out of the ground. So more so, they're also lagging behind because they really need finance, So we need more pressure to be put on the insurance companies, on the banks that are financing these projects to make sure that they pull out, because at the end of the day, the project is not Ugandan, the project is not Tanzanian. We are not going to benefit from this project. If you look at the sharing agreements, the percentages that each country is going to get from the revenue, the biggest percentage goes back to the oil companies. And secondly, the oil is going to be transported from Hoima to Port Tanga. None of our youth is going to be employed permanently. This is a sector that requires high experience expatriates, which we don't have in Uganda. But if we invest in areas where we have a high comparative advantage, tourism, green jobs, agriculture, we are able to employ over 80% of Uganda's unemployed youth. So the East African crude pipeline is not going to benefit us. Secondly, when you look at the progress at which it is moving right now, it is actually creating more unemployment in Uganda, because these are the women, these are the families that were basically depending on their land to generate income from the produce that they sell. Now they have been displaced, but the pipeline is moving on steadily, and the people don't have access to medical facilities. They can't afford them. Even the government facilities where government says it has put medicine, you have to pay to access your own medicine that the government has provided for you freely. So there are a lot of corruption challenges. Without money, you can't be attended to. Without money, you can't be given medicine. This is the same with the challenges the project affected persons are facing. Some of these people have not yet received compensation. Some of these people signed these documents without being translated for them. They were brought in front, they were brought in a community meeting, a lawyer, project affected persons, a representative from one of the oil companies, local leaders, and then they explain to you, and then they tell you to sign. But they weren't sure that what they were told is what is on the paper. That's the same thing. There's a lot of things that are going on in the East African crude oil pipeline, but even the persons that are affected directly by the pipeline are not aware of. So that is the situation on the East African crude oil pipeline in Uganda, without forgetting the intimidations of those people that speak up. First, in the host communities, these people are being intimidated. They can't speak up. Last month, one of the community representatives, Stephen, was abducted because he's speaking about the Telinga project, the Kingfisher, about the human rights violations there that are being done by CNOOC, which is a Chinese state-owned company. So there's a lot of intimidation. As much as these companies are laying pipelines, they're putting up rigs, they are doing a lot of media advertising on most of the media stations in Uganda. They are doing dirty work down there to make sure no one talks about what is happening, to make sure no one really brings out the truth. For example, the CNOOC is busy pouring the waste into Lake Albert. They don't want anyone to talk about it. Why? Because they're doing it at night. They're chasing away the fishermen from the lake at night so that they don't see them do all these atrocities. There's a lot that is going on that these oil companies don't want the world to know.
Thank you, gentlemen and ladies. You can catch this conversation on Spotify, SoundCloud, and follow us on social media at Stop EACOP.